What is up, guys? It is your final hour of NBA content for the slates going on today. At least we got a showdown coming up in just a little bit with the Clippers and Atlanta. And of course, as we always do on the show, we're going to review the main slate. We're going to fill some time. We're going to talk about a whole lot of things here going on in the NBA and at Awesemo. But I'm Chris Spags, joined by a man who is just regaling our producer Jordan and me about the glory days of DFS when he was playing players based off of sports talk radio. He's your old pal EMac. How are you doing, EMac?
Oh, those once upon a time, Chris, but that's how it was. There was no starting lineup pages. There really was no Twitter. By the way, Twitter was, I just saw they celebrated 15 years. I don't even remember Twitter in the early days. And then someone did a projected lineups page, but this teams didn't tweet anything out. There were no news sources. And basketball, that first year I did basketball, it was a strike shortened season. So they were playing like 4 and 5 games a week, and people were just sitting out of nowhere, but you had no news, literally no news. The only news you had is these sites had chat rooms. And if someone was watching their local broadcast pregame, they may come in and say, oh, this person's out. But then everybody else was reporting all sorts of fake news. It was the wild, wild west. And it would take 4 weeks. DraftKings used to run these $50,000 tournaments. For 4 weeks, they'd have ticket contests for them. And then even then, they'd kind of overlay.
Wow. All right. So if you guys think it's complicated now, imagine the early days. I guess honestly, it's like blissful ignorance in those days where you could just play players. I know even I've heard lore about the old days of DFS, and like you basically just had to have minutes projections of guys that were playing, and feel like you were minting all of your money immediately if that's what you had, and that's the only tool you had in your arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, baseball, people didn't know platoon splits or people that would sit if it was a lefty or sit if it was a righty or what have you. And people would start pitchers that weren't even pitching that day. Like, oh, I'm going to play Kershaw and I'm going to do this, because they didn't have the only starting page. They just listed all the pitchers and you had to go pick them.
A simpler time than what we are dealing with every day in DFS, but just a fun look back here and this hour show that we have to fill talking about showdowns. I guess now this is the upside of where we have now, where you are probably not finding a 50K up top single game tournament back in the old days of DFS. That was like, you had to be playing a 7-day-a-week tournament at that point to have this kind of money.
Yeah, it was, well, and they used to have week-long contests.
Yeah.
Because people they didn't know, I'm just going to play for a day. You mean it's just tonight? So they would do like basketball and baseball just for a rolling 7-day week. That was what Draft Street did as one of their formats. And if people got hurt or whatever, you were just like, oh, I guess I lost.
Speaking of, you did some of the best ball lineups, right? For the DK tournaments that were going around out there?
For NBA?
Yeah.
For the second half? Yeah, I did about half a dozen of them.
So that ends tomorrow, right? The first round does, or week 1 does?
Oh, I did. I'm trying, all the sites have the shittiest best ball format. You can't tell what's going on. Yeah. DraftKings, you're like, wait, I want to see what my players are doing. I don't care what they did this week, or are they in the starting lineup or are they not? It's just like a guessing game. Same thing when a draft had it. Like you'd have to wait until Tuesday for the NFL to fully update. It's like, really? You guys run this stuff and pay out 2 hours later on this whole site? Can't you transfer your technology? Or just let your UI guys work on something for about an hour, and it'll be better than the shit they've put out now. So
it reminded me, because I put in 3 entries, and I'm actually looking at it now. And what you're talking about is speaking to me as I'm looking at it, because I had one that I finished in second place with, which, by the way, this is the only time I could really rub it in Rinpack's face. But Rinpack in 12th place in this league, so don't go to Rinpack for your best ball advice. But I'm in second place, and I thought that the guys from today were still counting towards it, because it says 310 to 321, but it was still showing they had minutes left for guys like Jason Tatum, who's now been ruled out. Hopefully you guys have made all the swaps you needed for that. And De'Aaron Fox today. And I guess it doesn't matter. I was just in second, and now I'm either advancing. I think there was enough over, like Greg was saying, that I think I advanced to the next round. But then they also have a second tournament that pops up here. And actually, you guys can see it on the screen if you want here. You can see that there's now a second NBA best ball free 12 player that's popped up for today, which I have no clue what it means or what's going on. And it's just suddenly appeared in my draft. And I don't know what it is. Why is it here? You tell me, Matt.
I have no idea. I thought that they were I assumed, and I didn't read the rules. I assumed that we would just go, if we advanced, we'd go into a new collection of people we were playing against or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird one, but let's talk a little bit about the main slate today, guys, and smash that like button if you're here. We do these shows every day, whether it's just a showdown, whether it's a multi-game night slate. If there's a night slate and a showdown, we're doing them both, covering both the half hour heading into the multi-game night slate and then also covering the showdown with some of the big tournaments that are going on. So make sure you are tuning into this show every single night, and make sure you're also subscribed to the channel here at Awesemo. We clearly have hours of content going on all day long. The process video with Josh starts 6:30 in the morning on the East Coast, and then we are going right through this show. Sometimes there's even the PGA Live Before Lock coming up after us. So there is a lot that goes on in this channel. So make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you can see everything coming through. And if you want to place some bets here, if you have had a day of stress, some of the swapping that's going to go on or that has gone on that we're going to talk about in a second here, go to oddshopper.awesemo.com. At this point, prop betting seems like a leisurely activity and one where there is still a bit of an edge, which you can see with the ROI percentage and win percentage tools that are now a part of that process on oddshopper.awesemo.com. Those come right from Alex's own projections. Awesemo, Alex Awesemo Baker's own projections, as you know him. So make sure to go to oddshopper.awesemo.com, check it all out, and go to awesemo.com/join, which I think was just on the screen. I'm missing the target with Jordan as he's doing all this great production on his end. But OddsShopper, great for odds, and awesemo.com/join, great for getting all the other data that you can't get for free. So go over there right now. And we'll give away some ownership projections as well for the showdown coming up at the halfway point of the show. So smash that like button here because money time never rests. Even though I am no longer wearing EMac, don't have to wear the blazer for you. I know I can dress down for my old pal.
Well, I'm a little disappointed. I was trying to see, I thought at some point I had a money tie from when I worked in finance, but I couldn't find it. I think I've donated that since, but I was going to see if I could break that out. I do have one that has designs of baseball stadiums, generic baseball stadiums on it, like architectural views. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, if you work at a serious job, it's how you can always tell the guy who's a little bit more funny, Mac, is that he's got a silly sports tie on, but I respect it. And one thing I want a victory lap right now, which I didn't even know because I didn't play the guy. He just didn't pop up on our projection basis. But I mentioned on Live Before Locks today with Josh, which a big part of my process is these days is not doing a Live Before Lock shows and making some better lineups as a result. But today I got to share some pearls of wisdom on there. Tomorrow I'll be back on the tip off. But today I mentioned that the Cleveland Cavaliers were giving up a ton of production at the rim. And obviously, we know that the Cavs suck. I get that. But sometimes if you could pinpoint where the production is going to come, you can find little slivers of an edge. And a guy I didn't get to it all today. I mentioned I was getting a good amount of Halliburton. Thankfully, that's been working out decently. Buddy Hield as well, working out decently. But Rashawn Holmes, because of some of the big games he's had recently, I didn't get to him at his price point, but 21% more production given up by the Cavs at the rim. And it seems like Rashawn Holmes right now is benefiting because he's currently the top scorer on the slate, EMac. So I'll ask you, how much Rashawn Holmes did you get on a day where it just didn't seem like a guy who'd pop up unless you were looking through everything with a fine-tooth comb?
I got exactly 3%.
Okay, so better than the zero that I got.
Yeah, that was not good. I have 1% of Jeff Teague. I don't know. I haven't decided if that's good or bad.
Yeah, I think it couldn't be a bad thing to have Jeff Teague potentially getting a little bit more. I mean, normally playing Jeff Teague, not a great thing, but no Kemba, no Jason Tatum. Those seem like net positives. Was there anything that you feel particularly good about, EMac, for the content you've done and some of the views you played, or just things that you played in some of your lineups?
So I ended up going to a ton of Jaylen Brown. That was something I did not start out with today. It looks like I have 55% on the main slate, which is pretty aggressive. I had John Wall, but I went away from that one. I do have 35% TJ McConnell. I'm still okay with that, even though he's not starting. I suspect they need somebody that can have offense off the bench. And if they've got Dougie McBuckets in the starting lineup and you're now left with Justin Holiday, ooh, the Holiday brothers battling each other. I didn't think about that today. But Justin Holiday will take a lot of shots. Do they go in? I don't know. So I think that McConnell's just going to be fine from that one. Of the early guys doing well, I have 36% Karl Anthony Towns. I feel good about that. Sexton and Garland were two guys I said would be kind of fun playing today. I have 30% of Sexton and I have 16% of Garland. Garland not looking that great, but Sexton looking pretty solid. Those are just kind of the main ones there. I'm trying to see. Devontae Graham was 4,800 on DraftKings. He's not somebody I was really excited about until I was like, it's 4,800. And on the season, he's still averaging almost 30 minutes or about a point per minute and just shy of 30 minutes. So thinking of back to his last 10 games or so where he was coming off the bench and not playing a lot of minutes, you're like, wow, he actually wasn't bad at the beginning of the season when it was LaMelo Ball coming off the bench. So I felt a little bit better about that. The one that terrifies me a little bit, 45% Zubac.
Yeah, I was getting a lot of Zubac today, and we're obviously going to talk about him more vis-a-vis the Showdown slate coming up. And there really isn't a lot to swap-temize on, I guess, to be the main thing, because we only have one game that's active now, or that's coming up now, the one that we're going to be talking about for the Showdown with Atlanta and the Clippers. All the other games have started, so from a swap-temizing perspective, there won't be a ton to hit on today. But Zubac is one guy. I guess we could start to hit on it a little bit. I think I'm getting a lot of him too on DraftKings. I'm actually going to see where I landed in my final crunch because I had to swap-temize so many times that I didn't know where I'm actually ending up with things. I also just want to point out real fast, I ended up with a lot of Karis LeVert. I went that direction instead of going to McConnell just because I think he can be more of the Nets playmaker that he has been in the past, but we'll see as that game is just tipping off about now. But in this spot for Zubac, I got 48% Zubac, and that's with me having almost 70% Moses Brown. And I don't know how you move away from him on the assumption that he plays just sort of how he's played all year long. And I think, too, the one thing that jumped out to me, Mac, that I talked about on Live Before Lock is the rates do come down a little bit. Just if you put even one of Kawhi and Paul George on the court, the sample size for having both of them on the court alongside him isn't big enough to really, I think, look too much into. But even if you shave a little bit of usage off, shave a little bit of rebounding off, even a little bit of assists off, he still looks like one of the best plays on the slate. And I think you have to trust that today. Coming off that last game where his minutes were a bit limited by a blowout, I think Zubac is viable for a Showdown captain. I don't know you need him on DK's Showdown today as captain on FanDuel as well. You're normally not going to play a guy like Zubac at MVP. But for the main slate, if you don't have Zubac and you have some way to get to him, I don't know what you'd be going to at this price point. Maybe you have $100 left in Kevin Huerter. Going to Zubac still seems like the one swap-temizer play that I would make just because I don't think he's going to be as owned as he probably could be, EMac. But how do you feel about, I guess, the potential to swap-temize anything? And then start to talk to me a little bit about Zubac and where you're feeling about him.
So Zubac would be the one guy that you can go to. He does have the ability to access 30 fantasy points. The only other guy I was kind of thinking about is Clint Capella, but the problem is with what we probably have left, and with just one game, you really may only have one player on your lineups, maybe two at most. So and one of them will probably be Paul George or Kawhi, and the other will probably be Zubac. So it's kind of hard to maneuver with that. But I do think he's the one that could help save some dead lineups. We don't have official word yet on Trae Young, or has he been listed as?
I think he's been ruled in. Let me just double check, but I'm pretty sure I saw that alert go through, and there were so many coming through. There were a few too many. Yeah, he's available to play. Came out there.
Okay, perfect. So I like I didn't. How do I phrase this? If he was going to be out, I had more fear that their whole offense was going to self-combust against the very solid defense of the Clippers. With him in there, I think it's going to help keep the spacing and open things up, which they can do the feeding Capella low in the post. And I think Capella has the advantage over Zubac. And that would be the one other guy I'm interested in. And that kind of branches out to the late slate, to the Showdown slate here. I'm more worried that I have that, almost half my lineups have Zubac on the main slate because that's other players I'm not playing. It's not that I don't think he's a good play. It's just that, all right, all the eggs are now in this basket. So we'll see what's happening. I see someone asking, what are the best plays on DK Showdown below 4,000? Let's look at that. That'll give us a fun talking point.
You're getting right to the meat of things. I feel like
they've asked me twice, so I want to throw it out there.
No, I believe you push back. We don't negotiate with terrorists demanding the best place under $4,000 immediately. But they're you want to be their old pal. I'll let you give one, but we got to stretch this out a little bit, buddy.
Well, no. I'm just looking. I wanted to see what we're working with here. Chris, we have
not a lot.
We don't have a lot. So
in fact, honestly, EMac, it might be a worthwhile exercise just for the sake of filling an hour to list every player at 4K.
That's where I'm going with this. So.
We've got Bogdanovich, who I think is going to be the clear-cut best play at 4K. Yes. Tony Snell, Nathan Knight, Rajon Rondo, Luke Kennard, Terrence Mann, Solomon Hill, Patrick Patterson, and Amir Coffey. These are all very bad choices, EMac, besides Bogdan Bogdanovic.
Wait, isn't Nathan Knight your boy?
He's my boy when Capella or Gallo or John Collins are out. They are all in, so he's not my boy today.
Just checking, just in case somebody had that callback like I just did.
He's my boy if there's a blowout. He will put up a lot of stats if there's a blowout. If he is playing as we're expecting today, this game to go, Awesemo has him in for 4 minutes. So I don't think he's not a slate breaker at 4 minutes.
Okay, there we are. The core answer is going to be it's Bogdanovic. I mean, it's really not even close. He's the most likely guy to get double-digit shot attempts because Rondo not going to shoot, Tony Snell not going to shoot, Terrence and probably not going to shoot. You need a oh, and he tweaked his ankle here. It says the end of, or was that a week ago? I hate how they don't have the day.
I gotta admit, I've been paying the closest attention to Terrence Mann news, but
yeah,
for 12 from Awesemo today, or actually no, 17 from Awesemo today. So
I'm looking at the blowout thought for there, like, or mop up. We'll call it mop up duty, right? And not that Atlanta's been playing poorly; they've actually been pretty good. Nate McMillan, former Seattle Supersonic, Mac 10. He's leading the team very well. But you've got those guys down there. I mean, I would rank them Bogey, Rondo, Mann. I really have no desire in playing Tony Snell. Let's see. He's Mr. Steals and blocks occasionally, but he has 2 steals and 1 block in his last 7 games combined.
His minutes are going to get squeezed by DeAndre Hunter being back too. I think like that to me is the main thing for any of those value guys. Same thing for Solomon Hill. I guess, to their credit, Snell is still in for 18 minutes from Awesemo, Solomon Hill in for 16 minutes. But I think having Hunter around there, like Hunter, I don't think is playable for Showdown. He's close, but I think there are guys a little bit more expensive projected there. But I think it all just gets kind of screwed up now. We talk about it with a lot of things, but it definitely applies for Showdown too. When you have these guys constricting at a price point that I don't think the Showdown pricing was meant to reflect that Hunter was going to be playing. I think they all are a little bit overpriced for even what Tony Snell is or Solomon Hill is, which is not a lot.
No, this is just an intro. Yeah, I'm looking at Hunter. He's been out for almost 2 months now. So that's a fair amount of time that we have no idea what to expect. And this is not the softest landing for him to come in and have to go against Paul George and Kawhi, et cetera. Pat Beverly's still out, right?
That he is. So Reggie Jackson, I think actually a pretty solid play today for the Showdown, which doesn't excite me a bunch. And I think playing 4 Clippers for me on the Showdown feels a bit lofty, but that is the build that I got to for my pre-show building a Showdown lineup after doing all my ungodly main slate swapping. And I guess, EMac, we could talk more about the Clippers side now. We're going to jump around a lot here because 40 minutes left to go here before lock. So not any other news we're anticipating getting to come through. But I think Reggie Jackson's a perfectly fine play, like 27 minutes, projected for him from Awesemo today. I think he's been competent as the starting point guard with Beverly out, and at least the minutes have been there for him in a way that I don't mind. He does lose a bit in usage, but I think that's fine by me because Atlanta, the total here for the Clippers is pretty solid, a 115.5 implied total, up a little bit on the Clippers season average. I think there's room for a lot of guys to get here. So that's my strategy for the night, EMac. Loading up on the Clippers side doesn't feel too crazy here, but I do think Reggie Jackson is one guy who gets my lineup a little bit less of an ownership product. So how do you feel about going to him today? And how do you feel about the concept of going to a batch of Clippers?
I think that's good. And in this one, I think you can actually play it where if you do, a Paul George and or Kawhi, you can feel comfortable going with some of the reserve guys that aren't down in that scrub territory, like a Rondo or not Bogdanovic. I'm sorry, I flipped the teams in my head. With Terrence Mann or Nick Batum or somebody where you're like, okay, they may get a little more run. You're going to get the 48 total minutes of a position and sort of look at it that way. A lot of times where we say, I want to try to find everybody who's going to be in the closing lineup. Doesn't feel like this is going to be a game where Atlanta is going to stay close. I mean, but LA's only favored by 6, and we know anything can happen. But this to me just feels like this is like a prove it game, and I don't think Atlanta's going to rise to the occasion on the road. If this one was in Atlanta, I would think I would be thinking about it just a little bit differently. Obviously, few fans and any of that out of the equation, but time zone, own how, comfort, are you on a road trip? What is your back-to-back situation? I mean, today was I expected today to be crazy with news because there were 7 teams on the second end of a back-to-back, but it really wasn't those teams that drove a lot of our news. This was some other unexpected stuff that came up today. The other thing that was weird about the entire main slate, there was like no super duper stars, right? You had Karl Anthony Towns, you had Sabonis, and then now you're down to Kawhi and Paul George, and we'll put Trae Young in here. That there wasn't that many, whereas Friday and Sunday we just had gobs of the top shelf guys and guys that were tons of people projected and or getting to 50 fantasy points. There'll be a couple people that score 50 fantasy points tonight, but it's going to come from one of 20 different people instead of, oh yeah, someone of these 10 or these 6 are going to do it, right? So it's kind of weird recalibrating from yesterday to today and then now down to the final late slate. It's sort of the vantage point has been rapidly shifting. So I'm just trying to get set on this one. Sorry.
One thing, I'm watching the chat too. And first of all, Sterling Brown, EMac, I think we mentioned before the show, and I didn't get to any of him, even though he was the one who took the big projection jump for me with the Kevin Porter Jr. being ruled out somewhat late. And John Wall ended up looking a little bit better, but not materially better. So sometimes that's just the way the minutes part works and why you should be getting your minutes projections. People were asking about Reggie Jackson minutes that I cited earlier. That's from Awesemo, and that's part of the package there where you can just pull straight projections, or if you're like me and a lot of our guys on staff here, you're pulling Awesemo's projections, but you're also creating your own, or you're just using it as a frame of reference. And there are a stat lines page on there. There is a stat lines page rather on the projections page where you can see all the minutes projections and keep an eye on that. But one thing I just wanted to talk about that I'm seeing in the chat right now, because we do have a lot of time, people were tilting about Chris Middleton not looking good after 2 minutes of court time. I know we talk about this more on the show than anything, but I looked down on my phone while EMac was talking, while of course paying near and dear attention to everything EMac is saying, as you all should be doing. And then I looked down, it's like, oh, Middleton has 9 fantasy points after 2 minutes. Like what? Like you gotta, the tilting, it tilts after a half. And even then sometimes guys will bail out. We've seen that happen more than enough times this year, but really the tilting after 3 minutes, you gotta don't worry about the eyeball test too much in 3 minutes. Just let things kind of work out.
Well, it's like with Jordan Poole on I guess it was Saturday. Was it Saturday? God, these slates are all blend. Saturday, everyone was freaking out. Oh my God, he's doing horrible. I think he ended with almost 40 fantasy points or something. He had a great second half or final 3 quarters or whatever. But yeah, people, his first rotation were just like, oh my God, chalk, busted. Only the fish, it was such a fish play. I can't believe I went there. And then he ended up being one of the 10 highest scoring players of the night.
Yeah, it's, I get you all want a victory lap, and not you all, like we all too, like I want to be right too. I love when my guys are putting up a huge performance early and it feels like the momentum is going to carry out the rest of the game. But like right now, Tyrese Halliburton is a player who I think last I checked, he's slowing down a little bit. He's fine right now, 28.75. I'm not gonna be mad at it. But like, he started really hot at 20 fantasy points at halftime. I didn't expect him to end up with 40 because that's just not how these games go. There's a lot of game flow things that happen, a lot of different moving parts that happen. Sometimes guys just start slow deliberately, where a Middleton, I don't have the game on right now, but Middleton maybe letting other guys get their shots early because he knows he's going to get his at some point during the game. It's the kind of thing that happens a lot. So I would just encourage all you guys, I love watching the games and watching my DFS lineups go up and down and knowing who my guys are that are correlating the most to me getting more money. But just getting tilted about it early is just never, you're going to lose years off your life with that methodology.
That is true. Jordan and I were talking a little bit about that before the game. The swings that you have in DFS they're dramatic. The highs are never as high as the lows are low, as with, I think, most things in life. But this is one of those where you can just get your teeth kicked in constantly. And you have to decide, I had a nice last 2 days. And even though I had an upload issue with my file last night, I did okay on my sports betting and I did okay on some other stuff. So I had a nice profitable day. But it was one of those where I had lost like 5 days in a row, where I'd lost like at least 50% of my buy-in, if not more. And that usually doesn't happen with the way I'm playing. So I was getting all sad and depressed and just like, am I doing this wrong? What have I forgotten? Is there a hole in my game? And then now I look at my balance where it is right now. It's the same as what it was a week ago. So I managed to go down and come back. Doesn't feel like it came back because it didn't happen, with one big lightning strike. But I was like, wait a second, didn't I was pissy for a whole week when I came to doing this, and somehow I made it all back. It's just the steady pace. If you can't laugh at this or laugh at yourself, you're either doing the wrong thing or you're playing too much money.
Yeah. No, the bankroll management is so crucial. And I feel like I try to mention this show in as much because on a live before lock, it's sort of tough to work in these things. But on these kind of shows where we have a little more time to stretch our legs, very important to read those Learn DFS tools, or click through the articles on the Learn DFS tools, or watch the videos, whatever that me at the Awesemo.com homepage, because bankroll management's crucial, and also playing more on nights where you have the bandwidth to really dive in and spend the time on it, I think is something that's important. I know I mentioned it today with Josh that I've been loving FanDuel recently on a really nice run, where even my bad day on Saturday was still like I gave away a fractional amount compared to what I'm giving away on a bad night on DraftKings for me. And I've been playing more FanDuel, but I don't want to play FanDuel and risk $800 on a slate that I'm doing a show. Like I can't mentally get there with how news can break and how I have to, run point on a show and keep things moving along and all that. Like it seems all like fun and games and you see the man in money suits, but like I don't want to wager more than I'm uncomfortable with on, certain times. And I think that is a big part of it, is just knowing your own bankroll, knowing your own limits, and also knowing that, some nights you could get it back. Like tomorrow I'll be playing heavy on FanDuel, but today was more of a DK day for me because that's just a little bit easier for me to manage in my current workflow.
Yeah, and that's it just kind of comes down to what do you feel comfortable with, knowing your limits, knowing what works, and the ROI hits that we take when we're on the shows up till lock, it's not even funny. Because it's probably 15 or 20%, I would think. It's more about just surviving on those nights. And because I love to use Josh's quote where it just takes one lineup to break free, and you're still going to be able to do that when you're doing it. But it's not the carefully crafted lineup with the extra, synergy of correlated plays in basketball. Because all of a sudden you make one tweak, or, I'm just going to run another crunch, and then you lose a game stack or you lose a player combination you wanted. It's just like, at the end of the night, you're like, I wanted to do all this, and I literally did none of that.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, for me, I'm looking up the DraftKings slate on DK Live's desktop version, which is normally the way that I review things. And I straight up can't find Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ranked anywhere. And I'm not sure why that is. I found and now he's on point guard only. He's not on point guard and shooting guard. But I talk about a guy who I would have never played him if I were doing a live before lock show. I'm so tired of Shai. I play him every slate. And when there was at least one Thunder guy out, and he somehow finds a way to either disappoint or just be mediocre every single time out. And boy, it's getting tedious, EMac.
Yeah, there are certain guys that destroy your nights, and it's just frustrating.
It's going to happen, I guess, when Ty Jerome has 25 fantasy points in 14 minutes. So there you go. There's always a push-pull mechanism with it all. And we're at about the halfway point of the show. We have nowhere near enough likes right now to give away money, but I don't care to give away free ownership projections, but it's money time anyway. I'm going to flip the freaking hat and give away some ownership, and smash the like button here, guys. For the Showdown shows, we just get a little bit less people in the door rather. So help us out as much as you can. Hit that like button, because your old pal and I need that support now more than ever to carry us through the back half of the show. And I'm going to refresh the ownership projections to make sure that they're hot off the presses. Of course, you can always get the night slate ownership and the Showdown night slate ownership. Really, whatever the big tournament is on Showdown, there's going to be ownership projections for those. So make sure you're checking awesemo.com/join. All the packages on there are going to include some version of that, but use the express package if you want to save some money and get things in grade form. Get the full package if you want to get a little more data in your life, including the ownership projections, the player projections, and the boom bust tool. The top 5 owned for the Showdown right now on DraftKings looks like, and this is cumulative ownership, number 1 is going to be Kawhi Leonard, 83% overall ownership. He's also the leading captain owned play, though not too far ahead of Paul George. And number 2 is Paul George, 79% cumulative ownership. Number 3, Trae Young at 75%. And number 4, Clint Capella at 54%. And the last guy here, number 5, Ivica Zubac at 50%. EMac, all these guys here, I think, look like perfectly fine plays. Certainly guys you never have any issue getting to. But out of Kawhi, Paul George, Trae Young, Clint Capella, and Ivica Zubac on a DraftKings Showdown slate, does one of them seem overowned to you? Or is there any guy who, are you okay with all of them? Because I think on this slate in particular, you might be okay with all of them.
I'm okay with all of them. I think we need to differentiate. So if I was going to exclude one of those players, for me, it would be Kawhi George. It'd be Paul.
If only you
Kawhi Leonard. Jeez, now I almost called him Paul Leonard. Good God. It's been a long day, and I'm doing 2 all-day training sessions the next 2 days that start online at 8 a.m. in the morning. Oh boy. So yeah, early to bed for me tonight. But we've got for me, here's my thoughts on Leonard. Paul George is really close to this similar production and rates, and the minutes are not that far off. It would not surprise me if they're using this as an opportunity to give one or both of them a little extra rest in the final frame if they are able to be controlling the game. There's no guarantee of that, but I would think that Kawhi would get first shot at that, and Leonard would sorry, I keep doing it again, and Paul George would be out there with probably Batum and Reggie Jackson and pick two guys off the bench, closing it out. That would be my guess. So playing for that, I would leave Kawhi off my lineup. The interesting thing with Paul George and with Kawhi is that they're kind of in that sort of LeBron, Anthony Davis mode where they're getting 40, but much more than 40 isn't really happening, and they're alternating, and there's no rhyme, no reason to which one breaks over to it's like, wait, is that Opa Gangnam Style? What do we got going on here with our producer?
I don't know that you could compare a Korean person to the most famous Korean pop star, but honestly, Jordan Klein currently does.
He looks like Psy. It does perfectly. That is awesome. That is awesome.
Better than when I forget who it was who compared Jordan Klein to Big Hero 6 to the robot in Big Hero 6. I think it might have been Eric Lindquist called him that.
I don't know who that is, but
it's a movie character, EMac, from Mad. Right. You probably should know, but I remember just the trailer, and I remember being like, that's a pretty good burn by Eric Lindquist. That's probably the day that we realized we should all make fun of Eric, because if he gets too powerful, he'll tear us all down like he did Jordan with that comparison.
That is pretty harsh for your old pal. Your old pal, Eric Lindquist with the voices.
This is what I was talking about in the Live Before Lock show. I said EMac gets a little bit loose on our late slate shows. This case is making fun of Eric's. Brings me joy. That's all I care about on this show. Just for my top five guys, we're fading one of the top five guys. I will say the one I'd move away from, and Brad Levine, one of our regulars in the YouTube chat, pointed out, the minutes for Capella, I think, are trending in a bad direction, where he is not top 30 minutes in his last few games. And granted, the last one had foul trouble, so that's going to be a part of it too. But still, 26, 23, 26, 27, 28. Then he played 30 the one before that. And then before that, I think, was when he was not being limited by whatever heel injury or foot injury that he has going on. I think Capella's the one you can move away from. And part of my logic too is the Clippers shoot fairly well. I think you play Capella more in lineups where you don't have a lot of Clippers. And I'm just more inclined to play a lot of Clippers because I think they're going to have a good day shooting it. And I think, to me, that's where I don't want to play Capella, because there's going to be less rebounds to go around. It's not like Capella's going to have a fantastic shooting day and he's going to be dominating at the rim. I think having Zubac in, especially, to me, makes the likelihood of Capella getting a really good day shooting it. I think that goes much lower than it would be with Ibaka. But I think in a spot, EMac, I would be willing to move away from Capella, and that's sort of my thought process. But do you have any feel at all for Capella? You're okay with them. Kawhi was the one you'd move away from a little bit more, but do you feel like Capella is a priority play where you want to have over half your lineups with him?
No, but I think at least a third of my lineup. So if I was building three, so let's do this, because I usually don't mass multi-entry on these showdown slates. I usually do 20 max, so I'm going to hand build. I kind of like hand building on our shows. So let's break out the DK here and let's see. So I'm going to go Paul George as my number one. I want Trae Young in there. I do want Capella. Now I got 6,000 per. So Zubac is an easy one. And then now it gets interesting, because I could go with Leonard and I still have 2,200. And coincidentally, Luke Kennard, which is not quite an anagram of Kawhi Leonard, I'm stretching here for comedy, it's not working, is 2,200. Is he even going to play today? That's a better question. Remember when they signed him to a big contract? Yeah. So I think what we want to do there, so now I'm feeling comfortable. So now how do we get a little bit different? Kevin Huerter, I think, is somebody that, excuse me, is not going to be on a lot of people's radar. And I think leaving about $1,000 on the table also is a viable option here. So I'm going to leave 800 on the table. I'm going to round out my lineup with George, Trae Young, Clint Capella, Ivica, I can't say his name, Zubac.
Ivica's fine. I think I go Ivica, but I think it's Ivica too. I actually might be Ivica as the correct one.
And then Marcus Morris Sr. with 800 on the table. So that to me looks pretty good. But that's could be what we'll see. And the big difference is I don't have Kawhi. So right there, I'm now different than 70% of the field, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a different one. I found it hard to not have Kawhi or Paul George at captain just because I think there's so much money to go around on the slate. Like the pricing on this one kind of baffled me because normally you're really struggling to get in a bunch of quality plays at the price point, but I was able to get Kawhi, Paul George, and Trae Young into one lineup with $1,000 left on the table. And, I might be more of a believer in the Bogdanoviches of the world as value or Reggie Jackson we talked about earlier. I'm just giving away the lineup, but that's sort of, I think to me, you can still play Kawhi at captain and get there. And I think if you are going to play Kawhi at captain, you have to play somebody who's a bit lower owned. And for me, that's going to be Bogdan, I guess, is the guy who I'm playing a little bit lower owned. I'm actually a little worried now looking at this lineup. It might be too chalky with our ownership projections, but let's go do the FanDuel ownership real fast because we did the DraftKings one. I don't mean to short shrift the FanDuel one. FanDuel's just a little bit less to machinations to talk about compared to DraftKings with the captain position. But on FanDuel, top 5 owned plays, 86% Kawhi Leonard's number 1, Paul George number 2 at 77%, Ivica Zubac number 3 at 67%, Trae Young number 4 at 66%, and Clint Capella number 5 at 46%. And for the MVP slot, EMac, where there's no premium there, these guys are honestly all pretty well owned. Trae Young is the lowest owned of the trio. And I think that'd be the move. I would make it MVP on FanDuel to get different. Kawhi is going to be the chalk captain and the MVP, whether you're playing on DraftKings or FanDuel respectively. But how do you feel about the MVP spot with these 5 guys? Because we talked about them. You're going to be okay with them as plays on FanDuel as you are on DraftKings. But for MVP, do you feel like there's enough of a ceiling for Trae? I feel like it's really only Kawhi, Paul George, or Trae that I would play because MVP on FanDuel, I think is just not as interesting to me. And this is where I always, because there's not that, and I enjoy having that extra 50% salary decision point on DraftKings. I think it opens up the player pool quite a bit, gives you a bunch of different strategies. And then even if you're air quote fading someone that not in the captain, you can still play him in the utility. And it's not a complete wash because then you get that extra money that you can use on somebody else, right? So maybe it is better to take the half their points, but have a better player or a player upgrade, right? That's kind of the whole theory of it. On FanDuel, I just get painted into the chalkiest plays, and I'm incapable of doing anything other. So I would actually probably take Trae Young out of it, and I'd really only play George or Kawhi. Interesting.
In that top slot.
I
would consider Trae for the second slot, but not because they do 1-5, 1-2-5, and 1, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that I get where you're going with it. I just feel like Trae to me on for some reason as a DraftKings captain, I found him less appealing, but I think it's probably the same case. The ownership discrepancy also is not as big on DraftKings where Kawhi is going to be the chalk play there. And it's a 5% difference between him and Trae Young as the number 3 owned overall captain. But I think on FanDuel where you're getting, he's going to be half the ownership of Kawhi at MVP. He's going to be about 6% less than Paul George at MVP. I think that's sort of the spot where I don't mind taking Trae because on DraftKings, these guys are basically, I think, going to be owned appropriately / there's no discount in going to Trae ownership wise. On FanDuel, I think there is one, and I think the ceilings are still the same there. So that's sort of my logic. And you don't have Beverly in there for anybody who loves individual defense matchups. Not having Beverly, this is probably a much cleaner Trae Young spot than it would be normally. So I think all those things combined, he would be my MVP choice with a lot less ownership. But whatever. On DraftKings, EMac, let's talk about the captains there because I talked about the chalk Kawhi, talked about the chalk Paul George, Trae Young. I think that you're going to get these guys a captain more. That said, I feel like Kawhi is still a little bit under-owned as a top-owned captain, so that's sort of how I'm justifying still going there at captain, even though my lineup's going to be a lot chalkier as a result. I'm hoping leaving the $1,000 on the table will help it out. But what are you doing at captain on DK where you are paying that 1.5x premium, so not quite as much of a blank slate as it is on FanDuel?
So I did the sort of fade Kawhi lineup. Now I'm going to do the chalk donkey lineup. So that's going to be Leonard and captain, Young and Paul George. And I still have 4,500 per. Someone was asking me, would you play Collins and Capella together on a showdown slate? Yes. You don't have that many you just don't have that many other options. The reason a lot of times we'll say on the anything other than Showdown that they're not the best is they both get their good games when they get rebounds. You can't share a rebound, right? One person is going to get it. It's binary. So that's where you're like, wouldn't it be a better chance to pick somebody else, and maybe the other person you pick and whichever one of Collins or Capella you choose has the most rebounds, right? That's because this other guy in another game or even on the other team has a better chance, right? He's not competing for the exact same rebound your guy is. So that's the simplest way to describe why we say, you don't really want to play them together. What does that cost either one of them? I don't know. The biggest outlier is probably 5 rebounds per game. So that works out to 7.5 fantasy points, but that could be a big difference maker here. Showdown, you don't know. There's also times when they're going to split the rebounds, right? So you're happy either way from that one. So that's sort of my thought is when there are multiple games in play, you go somewhere else. When there's not, and then it doesn't matter. It's harder to get the perfect synergy. Your best bet is to say, if the game remains close, who do I think is going to be on the court at the end? If one team runs away, who do I think gets unexpected minutes or who loses expected minutes? You got to build it around a little story or a scenario. We say a story, but just pick a scenario or an outcome and build backwards from that.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable for the showdowns. And I think really, we talk about it a lot and really across the DFS industry, it's something that people say a lot, but playing the best plays is definitely something that you want to do with the main slate. But for showdowns in particular, it's about, hey, like I just need to get X amount of fantasy points in each spot for the most part. And you don't want to take flyers on guys who are only going to play in case of a blowout for the most part. Obviously, sometimes those plays will come through, but to be plus EV over time, like you're probably not playing as EMac mentioned earlier, the Nathan Knights of the world. You're probably not playing Okongwu too much. You're probably not playing Amir Coffey or Luke Kennard. You're not playing those guys because it's just there's no realistic outcome for them to get there. And I think that's why I wouldn't mind playing Collins. That said, I think Collins is going to be overowned because of that big game last time out where all the rebounds for him, he rebounded way more than usual. And I went through the popcorn machine breakdown there, which is one thing we talk about a lot in here, where you can see guys' production basically for every second that they're on the court and when they notch a stat at these particular times. All the rebounds came when Capella got into foul trouble early. And that to me spooks me off of Collins, where I think people will think, oh, his game has changed materially. But we know that Collins does well when he's the center, when he's the guy that Capella is not playing. He can do that full run, get his usage up, but also get the rebounding numbers up, because that's really where he falters when Capella's in. So I think if you're playing a build that assumes Capella's minutes are shortened because of him, maybe the heel or because he's getting a foul trouble, I think you play Collins more there. I would just be reluctant because I think he's going to end up in more lineups because people are just going to pop up that box score and be like, oh, wow, John Collins was amazing last game, even though Capella played, and not put together that, oh, he was amazing last game because Capella had foul trouble and saw less minutes, and John Collins mostly doesn't do anything when he's on the court. And also you're getting, DeAndre Hunter back, and that also has been a big inhibitor to Collins all the year long. So I think there's a lot of reasons to move away from Collins, but like EMac said, I just wouldn't be opposed to playing him if that's a salary point you get to, that's a salary point you get to.
So here's the chalkiest lineup, and I know it's going to be chalky because I zeroed it out. Kawhi Leonard, Trae Young, Paul George, Clint Capella, Rajon Rondo, and Lou Remember Me Williams. I wonder if they brought some wings for him from Atlanta. Interesting. That was kind of funny, Chris, but you missed it.
I'm replying in chat because people... Cola's saying that SGA is checking back, and I did see that SGA is now salvaging, as he always does. It's just random spurts of production for SGA in a way that make no sense with the guy who's got 30% usage on the year, but SGA is indeed salvaging and is now, in fact, the number 5 overall scorer on DK, which how that happened, EMac, while I went with my rant about not tilting early, for it to happen to me on the show. Boy, the irony of ironies.
That is hilarious. He's already got 37. Wow.
He's an incredible player when he tries on every single play, and then when he doesn't, you'll see Pokusevski have really good days.
Well, Pokusevski's having a really good day right now. We saw it. Boy, that guy just is very mercurial in his output. I see someone saying that what is Hunter back going to do? So let's kind of complete that thought. You mentioned maybe a little bit from Collins, probably a little bit from Gallo. My guess is that he'll play. I didn't see what Alex put him in. I had no interest in playing him at his price point.
At 20.
Oh, okay. I was going to say my thought would be about 18, which is kind of that 18-20 is the default when people are coming back, especially after a long layoff, because then they can kind of control it in, 2 or 3 manageable rotations. So I think those would be the guys. Who do I think won't be impacted? I do not think it impacts Rondo's rotation. I do not think it impacts Trae Young at all. I do not think it impacts Capella at all. But Collins, Gallinari, Kevin Huerter would be guys that I think each lose 2 or 3 minutes off of what is their kind of normal.
Yeah, I feel like Bogdan to me feels like there could be a trickle down of things not being great for him because
his price is still cheap enough.
Yeah, I'm still playing him, but I would just throw him in as I think he's
a good
less
point.
appealing than he would be otherwise. But he's still very much in play for me. I think he's a very good play on the show.
And it helps that Cam Reddish is out and or potentially on the trading block. So
it's honestly kind of a big rotation now for Atlanta in a way that seems odd, where there are, I think, 12 guys expected to be getting at least a couple minutes from Awesemo today. And that's not great for any team normally, but especially here. Also, Kabengele just got traded from the Clippers too, apparently to the Kings. So we had a minute going to Kabengele today for the Clippers, but I guess you can just give that to, I don't know, Patrick Patterson.
Pat.
Zubac, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I don't think it's going to impact Rondo, he's the only other point guard on the roster for someone asking that. Now, what do I think Rondo's going to play? Probably his usual 16 to 18 minutes, aka whatever time Trae Young is not on the court, and then maybe he gets to be in the closing lineup. But why do you put Rondo in the closing lineup? He's not a shooter, so.
Yep, I'm with you on it. Rock Latex saying, I feel like the $sign on that hat should have lights on it. If you know where to get me a light up hat, please let me know. I've exhausted all of my research I can on money hats, but love to add some new ones. I guess I'd have to do it myself. I'd have to get crafty and put in little LED lights, which probably a bridge too far for my lazy ass. Would you go shopping for that at the dollar store? No, of course not, EMac. You can never find a hat. You think you get a patent leather of this quality at the dollar store? Get out of here. It's easily worth $2 in production costs. Minimum.
Did you ever listen to Sir Mix-a-Lot?
I did.
Do you remember his Swap Meet Louie? I can't remember the name of the song where they sing about going to the swap meet and getting fake Louis Vuitton.
That I'm only familiar with his Baby Got Back.
Oh yeah, this was like 2 albums before that. He was in Seattle, so he was huge in the Seattle music scene. Kind of when they had those underground clubs, with not a lot of main stages. He was around kind of when I was in college, and a little bit before that. So he was always one of the guys that we were very familiar with, and thought he had some great stuff. But he'd sing about different things in the Seattle area.
So that's why the Seattle part's really the main thing. Yeah. Okay, I got you. A plus saying Spags playing Collins. By the way, just to be clear, I think especially on our channel, we really don't have much tout double talk. Like we talk about guys honestly. If you're still gonna play some, but you don't think they're a great play on their face, I can say with no mincing of words, I'm not playing a single lineup of John Collins on the main slate or on the Showdown. So I did not touch John Collins. I've talked before, I normally overproject John Collins. His price is stupid now. He's priced for good John Collins, and we are not going to necessarily see good John Collins again until Clint Capella is inevitably hurt over the next whatever period of time it's going to come up.
Now I want to see if I have, I ended up with John Collins. I have on the main slate. Oh, I don't have him on the main slate. I have him on DK tiers lineups. That's it. 8%.
Actually, I'll play a fun game here because just to prove my point, I basically have given you guys a lineup, but this is just a fun little experiment to see. I have $1,000 left on the table on DraftKings. I mentioned I have one of the chalk captains, so that means one of Kawhi, Trae Young, and Paul George. I won't reveal who. I might have actually said who it was, but if you guys paid attention, you can figure it out. Somebody paste my lineup in or guess what my lineup is in chat, and if you're right, I will give you credit. I don't have any prizes to give away. I'll give you an air kiss. I'll blow a kiss to you through the screen, and Jordan Klein will, will perform Gangnam Style for you.
Well, he looked like E.T. the last time when he had his hood up. So
EMac doing great bits that relate to me and him.
Jordan, have you even seen the movie E.T.? Cultural touchstone that everybody actually should see. That's a good movie. I'm building out your lineup here, by the way.
Oh, maybe you'll get it then. Kicks Good asking Young or Kawhi, captain and single. I don't want to give it away.
All right, I've got your lineup. That didn't take long.
Well, okay. I guess if you got it, then
have people put it. Well,
you don't spoil it. You can guess it at the last minute before lock. That seems like a fun thing to do if we get it right. Brad Levine's lineup is not correct. I did not.
If somebody gets it right, slide into my DMs and I'll get you a week of Awesemo premium content.
There you go. All right, so there we go. So we got a real giveaway going. So you got 8 minutes left to guess my lineup, and EMac will hook you up with a free week of Awesemo Plus. So that's a fun.
No, I'm not the one that turns it on, but I will get someone to turn it on. So sometimes it takes a day before I get our support, or it's not going to be as soon as you respond to me. I'll put the okay, there we go. All right.
So there you go. So here, kind of impromptu games you get here on the Late Slate show to show.
We appreciate the 150 of you that are tuning in. We really do.
No, honestly, we appreciate you all for sticking with our banter and us talking about the slate in varying chunks, because you gotta stretch for these hours here. And also drop your guesses into the YouTube chat. By the way, that's the way that we'll see them. And I could say so far nobody's gotten it right. So keep guessing. I guess honestly, if you want to keep guessing in there, feel free. Just don't spam the chat so nobody else can say anything. Here's a question from Kicks Good asking Lou or Herder. So there's one that I think is an interesting one, EMac, and I have Herder projected for 21. I have Lou projected for 20.2. So I would favor Herder, but I don't have a ton of interest there. I think you're getting both if you're running a bunch of crunches like many people in the showdowns will do. But EMac, how do you feel about that? Herder or Lou?
Ooh, I would definitely go.
Oh, also EMac got it right, by the way. So
I would go Herder. And I'm just seeing if I have enough left in mind to change from Lou. Oh no, I built your lineup. Never mind. That's not my lineup. I would go Herder just because to be a little bit different. Because the other thing is it's not like Lou Williams gets extra fourth quarter minute run like he did it previously when it was him and Harrell, and they would be closing out the game and just playing monster minutes. It's almost like he's kind of hitting a wall somewhat. They know they need him for the playoffs. He has a very specific purpose. He has earned his role in the rotation. He will be a prominent role in any close games that they have, but I don't see him playing if the game's out of hand. I think they'll go with Reggie. Maybe they'll go with Nick Batum. They have other guys on the bench that could really empty out if they have that opportunity. So I think his path of going poorly is that would have me on Herder.
I agree. And Herder just being projected for 7 more minutes, I think, is the main reason to go there. Mm-hmm. I don't have an issue playing Lou, but I think if you're putting in a single entry or you're just putting in a little bit less, in terms of the volume of lineups, like Lou can certainly get there. He has a torrid history, as EMac hinted earlier, a torrid history of playing Atlanta. In fact, his only bad game against Atlanta that he's played in an eternity came earlier this year in January. So maybe this is the year that he finally let go. But he still had 33% usage in that game, just shot 4 for 14. At Atlanta on January 26th of this year. But that's his only bad game. And literally going back to, on Fantasy Cruncher, they have it going back to 2015. He has only had 1 game in red in that entire time period, that one time in January.
Do you know how old he is?
He's probably around my age. I think he's 35.
Yeah, 34.
34? Okay, so yeah. I saw somebody. Yeah, somebody got it. We won't spoil it, but feel free to keep guessing. I guess if we get multiple winners, we'll do the wheel. But somebody did get it, and I did note that. But thank you for catching, Jordan. Yes, that's people. Look, if you pay attention, we reward you, or try to at the very least.
He came in the league when he was 19 years old. Like, how many people remember that he played 7 years in Philly, 8 years in Philly?
I didn't know it was that long of a stint. That's great. I knew he played
7 years. It was 7 years.
I didn't think it was like that's like an entire player's career that he played.
His first years, he never made a start until his 5th season, and then didn't make another start for 2 more years. So in Philadelphia, only 1 year did he actually start, and he started 38 games. Otherwise, he came off the bench exclusively.
This is just a fun question here. If you guys have any last minute questions, the showdown, get them in. I feel like we've sort of covered every angle and possible player we can. So hopefully you guys have taken enough from it, but feel free to drop any questions in. EMac, you may be able to guess this, but I'm not sure, but who's the most relevant NBA player who's like within a couple months, like I think a month and a half of my birthday? Like who would it come to mind? Because I may be leading you a bit here, but he's still active in the league and is still very relevant.
When is your birthday?
October of well, I don't want to give out the year, but you can't age a lady, but 1984.
Oh no! Oh, so you're saying who is your age that's still relevant?
Yeah,
and it's not Lou Williams,
and it's like extremely close to my birthday.
No, LeBron's 37.
No, LeBron is 35. I think LeBron just turned 36.
Oh, is he? Oh, it's 17. No,
I think LeBron is my exact age, and he was born in December. So that has been my life comparison because he was a high school senior and I was a high school senior too. So yeah, my entire adult life has gone the same pace as LeBron's, and boy, could not feel worse about that one. No, my Top Shot moments, Jordan, are not going for anything near what his are going for. But my Instagram highlight reel from my Barca one-on-one game still out there somewhere. So that's I could sell it. I've thought about selling some not fungible tokens on my highlights. But yeah,
I did not realize that. I thought he was a little older.
I represent younger, and LeBron I think represents older because of the hairline. But yeah, we are basically the same age, and boy, it sucks. Only one person guessed it right still, by the way, EMac, so we don't have to do any sort of random draw.
Okay.
Yeah. Feel good about it.
Well, one person besides me. I was first.
Right. Though. Yeah, you were right there. You just knew.
I was actually listening to Chris when he was talking about the players he was analyzing.
There was one point where I think I listed every player in the lineup. Was like, oh, I just basically said what it was. But yeah, that's how it goes. Bismack Biyombo playing well. All of the Milwaukee Bucks playing well. Interesting little wrinkle here.
I took Biyombo out of my player pool.
I didn't take him out, but I wasn't getting him anyway. So I used to get so much Biyombo, and these days I don't get him anymore. It makes me sad. It makes me yearn for my early biz days. Let's do one little fun exercise because we got a few minutes left. So here are the guys under 10% EMac on DraftKings. And normally it does take a guy under 10% to get there to try to win a single takedown of a showdown. Obviously, you're going to split if you're not playing these guys for the most part, and that can differ with different captain options and all that. But Terrence Mann, DeAndre Hunter, Tony Snell, Rajon Rondo, Patrick Patterson, Solomon Hill, Nathan Knight, Luke Kennard, Amir Coffey. If you had to play one of these guys under 10% owned to just try to get different in a lineup, even if you left some money on the table, which one would you do with that grouping there of guys under 10%?
Patterson.
Okay.
And be ready for. I don't think he's going to get 0 minutes tonight. No, but that is a possibility when you're that deep in the rotation.
I think it would be Rondo for me, just because we know the production per minute and how that can grow, go crazy at times. It hasn't happened as much in Atlanta, but at 2,400, 7% ownership, I feel like that's the one I would take, even though definitely don't feel great about it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Because I had said that, well, that was the guy I put in my chalky lineup for 16 to 18 minutes. So.
Here's actually same question for FanDuel now, because we did it for drafting. It's only fair to do it for both sides. But we got Kevin Huerter under 10%, Bogdan Bogdanovic under 10%, Terrence Mann, Rajon Rondo, DeAndre Hunter, Luke Kennard, Tony Snell, Nathan Knight, Solomon Hill, Patrick Patterson, Amir Coffey. And shout out to FanDuel, because on ownership-wise, those last six guys are completely irrelevant, which I think is one of the perks of a FanDuel's showdown format or single game format. But in this group, I would still go Bogdan, I think, just because Huerter's a bit too expensive. Huerter's at 10K, Bogdan's on 8K, so that's it for me. But EMac, other the guys under 10% on FanDuel's showdown: Huerter, Bogdan, Mann, the rest of the crew, Rondo. Who would you want on FanDuel?
Bogdan.
Yeah, I think it's Bogdan for me too. Huerter does project better, but I feel like you probably still need the 2,000 in savings. So I think Bogdan would be my cheap guy. And if you could only afford Rondo, then he would be the fallback to that.
So I figured out the DK best ball since we're at lock.
Yep.
It is, if you're in the top two, you go on to the next round.
So why do I have a free roll then for my?
Well, I don't know. Somehow I got in a free roll tonight for some VIP thing where there's 1,200 of us. Remember when we got in that baseball one last year?
Yeah, then it was only me and you.
Yeah, and it was like, how did Spags and me get in this, but no Alex and no everybody else, right? And then I ended up getting third for like $2,000, and it was a trip. And then I defaulted to get the trip to the Kentucky Derby. So I guess this was 2 years ago, and I had to pass because I had just started work at a new job after having been unemployed for 7 months. So it's like I can't ask for time off week into my new job. But so I'm in one of those tonight, except there's 30 prizes, but the top 30 get a $2,500 ticket into some millionaire maker.
Oh, interesting.
I have no idea how I'm in it, right? So it's sort of like just sometimes I get put in these weird contests. that I'm not aware of. And I assume it's because I'm
fans of your old pal.
Well, I assume it's because I'm playing a certain number of games, or I've done X number of Slate. There's probably some weird contest out there that I met the criteria for, but I like that baseball one. I have no idea how I got in there, or with you, right? That was just weird.
Yeah, we never figured that out either.
It's like $100,000 prize pool, and there was like 800 people in it or something like that. So.
Yeah, I wish we had more of those secret tournaments that pop up. Speaking of, we got to give the shout out here. It is Ryan Durkin who got it correctly here. My lineup was Kawhi at captain, Paul George, Trae Young, Reggie Jackson, Ivica Zubac, and Bogdan Bogdanovic. So that was my lineup. That leaves $1,000 on the table. Congrats, Ryan. Jordan, how are we doing this? How should he get in touch? Oh, so he could. Wow.
So you'll take care of this? Okay.
Are you just at Jordan Klein? Jordan D. Klein. All right. Ryan DM'd at Jordan D. Klein on Twitter to collect your prize, and only Ryan Durkin. No other Ryans allowed or other Durkins. We only got a prize for one Ryan and one Durkin there. EMac, give the people the plugs here. They could follow you at EMac DFS. What else should they be checking you out for this week?
Every day we've got the DFS building blocks article. I will be on the late Slate swap and sweat show on Thursday. I will be on live before lock Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be a good time.
Bobby Portis still having a nice game, even though he's not starting. Classic DFS. I'll be back tomorrow on the Late Slate Show, and then I'm doing the tip-off 4 days this week, so come hang out with beautiful me and slightly less beautiful Kayla, along with Eric Lindquist, Ben Rossa, Greg Ehrenberger, rotating cast there. But tune in there. It's right before the deeper dive every day. We appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to follow at Awesemo_com to get all of our content and our giveaways, and, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel right now and hit the notification bell. We appreciate you guys. Hope you have a great night. Good luck.